just might be the best album ever recorded. Meredith Rutledge-Borger, curator for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Good morning and welcome to St. Louis.
Good morning. How are you today?
Is this really the best album ever?
I think so. Rolling Stone magazine certainly thought that it was and called it the #1 album. I think it's really one of the most ultimate achievements of 20th century rock and roll music.
Explain to the next generation who missed it why.
Well, 1967 was a wild year. The Vietnam War was going on, the civil rights movement was turning into black power, and there was this counterculture revolution. It was a world consciousness, and it was fueled by experimentation, musical and chemical experimentation, and the style was incredible. Peacock rainbow colors was reflected in fashion, art, literature, and especially music. And this album captured the essence of all of that.
Was it successful the moment it came out?
Yeah, it was. It was. Paul McCartney said while they were recording it, he said that they didn't really tell too many people about it. He said they were tinkering away with glee like the Seven Dwarfs. And they released it on a Friday, and that weekend, suddenly everybody had it. It was just everywhere. And he says everyone you knew talked about it. And that was the experience in London, and certainly here in the United States it was the same way. It was ubiquitous. Everybody had it. Everybody talked about it because it was just so different and mind-blowing.
A lot of drug references. I get high with a little help from my friends, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Was that, explain, was it because they were sort of cryptic coded messages in there, or was it just more than that?
Well, it wasn't even that cryptic. It was right there on the surface. Paul McCartney, again, was the first of the Beatles to admit publicly that he had taken drugs and that he wasn't ashamed about it. It was something that was happening throughout our culture in both the United States and in England. LSD had been legal up until 1966. So, it was just recently criminalized, and there was a real generational divide, and people were exploring and experimenting. It was a different world.
Is it just as relevant today as it was 50 years ago?
I think so. There was a reassessment maybe about 20 years after it was released where there was a backlash, and people said, oh, well, Sgt. Pepper, it's not all that. Revolver's better, Rubber Soul's better. But I think it's come around again, and on the 50th anniversary, I think people are admitting that, it really is a masterpiece. And as a complete work of art, it stands up.
The movie was terrible, right?
Oh boy, let's not talk about that.
And I'm no Beatles expert, but wasn't this the album where they sort of alluded to the fact that Paul McCartney had died?
Yeah. There was this big conspiracy theory that Paul McCartney had died and been replaced with an alien replica, and there were all these clues that you could find in a picture of Paul McCartney in Life magazine. If you held it up to the light, you could see that a car was driving through him, and just like all kinds of crazy stuff. And there were lyrics in the song I Am the Walrus that were supposed to be interpreted as I buried Paul. And actually what John was saying was cranberry sauce. So,
so what you're saying is, yes, it was a drug-induced era.
Yes, it was.
Meredith Rutledge-Borger, last question for you. My generation would probably say Thriller from Michael Jackson, the best album of all time. Why isn't that better than Sgt. Pepper's album?
Well, Thriller couldn't have existed without Sgt. Pepper. The idea of an entire album being a work of art and the kind of studio experimentation that took place while this album was being recorded really set the precedent for works of art like Thriller to follow. Sgt. Pepper took 9 months to record and cost almost $1 million, which at that time was just unheard of. And it really kind of set the template for that kind of extravagance and investment in one album.
Meredith Rutledge-Borger, curator of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Thanks for your time. Have a good day.
Oh, you too.
You got 7:20.